keep a foot on the gas here. So my name's Evan Saskin. I'm an architect. I'm the president of Blue Lion Building. We're a design, development, construction company. So we grew this sort of design build firm around missing middle housing since 2011. Next slide. So this is the sort of thing that we do. I gave a talk here last year about our niche and how we were looking at multi-unit buildings where we were creating very house-like units in smaller numbers, 2, 3, 4 units per site, designing them in a fairly elevated way, interior designs of ambition and personality, using the Condominium Act to carve up each individual unit and sell them to end users. Next slide. And so through that lens, this was really ably covered, I guess, by a number of earlier speakers today, but through that lens, I really wanted to compare the 2023 multiplex bylaws and the permissions that they allow with the more recent major streets bylaw. And I think we've sort of covered the differences between these two typologies, but what's really interesting to us is in the first decade, in the first 13 years that we were doing this, we were always building multiplexes, but they weren't really allowed. There were a number of small old City of Toronto neighborhoods where you could have multi-unit building, but the numbers were capped, the heights were capped, the depths were in every way more constrained than building a single family home on the same lot. And 2023 really inverted that. I've said repeatedly to everyone who will listen to me and a whole lot of other people that the 2023 multiplex bylaws are the most politically bold decision around planning from council in my professional life, and pessimistically, I'm not expecting a better one. So I think that there's just like tremendous untapped utility in that, and the new major streets bylaw, as we'll look at, is interesting, but maybe not fully cooked yet. Next slide. So in particular, we've looked at 9 sites as major street, 6-story, 10-plex, condo-like buildings, which was like everyone in the room here was buzzing about these last year. There could be new buildings, they were like multiplexes, but even bigger on major streets, and they could have these great apartment-like units that I think lots of us had beautiful, nostalgic memories of from other cities, but Toronto's never really seen before, certainly not since like the early post-war years. And as we've started to model up those buildings on sites, we're finding every single time that they're just like not viable if you're following a perfectly as-of-right pathway. So we were looking at this particular site. There's been 2 recent ones, one on Bloor, one on Mount Pleasant, where a multiplex as-of-right on the same site was meaningfully more profitable than a 6-story, 10-unit, perfectly as-of-right building on the exact same site. So this site was a 40 by 120-foot mid-block lot with access only from the front. It's in the deep west end of Bloor West, like in Etobicoke. Single-family housing neighborhood. You could buy rundown lots for like $1 million around there. Larger, newer properties are between like 2.2 to 2.5 million for a nice single-family home. Great transit access. Next slide. So one thing you could do is a 4-plex plus an ADU. And there are constraints on side yard setbacks, on the building height, 3 stories, on the building depth, 66 feet and change. But you get a good sized floor plate that could be divided up into like good usable units with windows on 2 sides of each of them. In practice, we, because we can't help ourselves, would divide these up asymmetrically so that every unit's a little bit different and configured a little differently to each other, helps with absorption. But at the end of the day, you get 4 units of 1,600 square feet each, an ADU of 1,500 square feet. This is like a perfectly as-of-right building on this location. 7,900 square feet of saleable square footage, $6.5 million in gross sales. I need you to remember that a single family house here, the really nice one that just got flipped, is selling for $2.5 million. This is I mean, there's complexity, of course, but this is an as-of-right pathway to have meaningfully higher gross sales on the same piece of land. Next slide. So by comparison, the 10-plex here is obviously taller. It's a 6-story building. It's allowed a greater depth of 82 feet as of right. It's a little more constrained. It actually ends up with the same size of floor plate, like a roughly 2,200 square foot floor plate. But this can get divided into smaller units, like half floor plate units, which would of course be ripe for single egress. But here we anticipated 300 square feet of inefficiency per floor. And really the whole ground floor isn't particularly saleable either. So you end up with 5 floors, 2 through 6, split in half each. And so we're calling them all equal. Again, we generally wouldn't. We respect that the lower floors sell for less than the higher floors, but around $900 a square foot on average gets you 10,000 square feet of saleable square footage, just under $9 million of gross sales. Next slide, we'll start putting these side by side. So here we are, 2 buildings, perfectly as of right. Either one of them, you could, roughly speaking, buy it tomorrow and apply for a building permit the next day and be under construction by Labor Day. Next slide. All right, I think as we go through the slides now, these are going to go through sort of highlighting one by one. So the next slide. It worked. Okay. So 4-plex on my left, probably yours also. 10-plex on the right. They have identical land costs. Next slide. The soft cost side by side, I understand there's opportunity for one to be more complicated than the other, more insurance, more time, whatever. For me, there's very small multiplier by square footage. We self-perform a lot of these roles, so we're calling the soft cost pretty comparable. Next slide, the shocking delta between the two of them. 10 units on a site comes with 10 development charges, so there's an $800,000 difference between the two development models here. If this were deleted, while the 10-plex model would be more profitable, it would still be vastly less profitable as a function of equity in the project. Next slide. We're carrying a bare $300 a square foot here, but apples to apples, just to multiply the difference, we build a little higher than that in the mid to high 3s right now, but I think that's sort of the lowest defensible number that nobody's screaming about right now. Next slide, the management fee. This is a tough one. Because the 10-plex model, there just isn't a lot of construction expertise in. They're not mini high-rises, and they're not big houses, and they're not stacked townhomes. And so it is, it's 70%, the 4-plex is 70% of the size of the 10-plex. It is gonna take probably 50% longer to build. We're carrying double a fee here to account for that difference. The financing, next slide, is coming right off of Foremost's model. We're just taking 70% of the net appraised value and borrowing that at 10% for a year. This doesn't really adequately account for the difference in timelines between the two approaches, but given that they're both as of right pathways to for sale units, recognizing that they could be further apart, this seems fairly realistic. And so next slide. We're looking at a cost base of $7 million versus $4 million, so roughly a 30% delta between the two of them. Sorry, where the 4-plex is 70% of the 10-plex. Over on the revenue side, we've gone over this, so I guess we could skip forward 2 slides and bemoan the existence of HST. It's just a stunning item, a meaningful fraction of the profit margin on a job like this. I think that if there's incoming legislative changes here, it will probably affect them a little disproportionately in favor of smaller, less expensive units. But I mean, we're still talking about a massive number here at the end of the day. And so in conclusion here, on the next slide, we're looking at I want to emphasize here, obviously a massive difference in IRR, but actually more profit, 1.6 million versus just under 1.1 million to build, 70% of the square footage to build less than half the number of front doors. And I think a lot of it has to do with the way we think about the value of apartment-like units versus house-like units. And a lot of it has to do with that efficiency ratio delta, where when you're building 4+1, every square foot that you build is saleable to someone as part of their home. Next slide. And sorry, one more. and again. I guess I was gonna, if you eliminate all of these items, then it's still you know, a way better benefit for multiplexes on an IRR basis. So why are multiplexes better? Obviously, higher lot compatibility. There's just a tremendously higher number of sites in the city that can support multiplex development. The DCs are a factor, but overall, just a pure lower cost base. It's easier to grapple with, it's easier to approve, it's easier to scrounge up the funds and financing. It's a better understood approvals process, although this could be massively better. We're comparing apples to apples with as-of-right buildings here, but I have never built an as-of-right multiplex. Like, I've been to the committee of adjustment every single solitary time. We've got a fairly good, you know, batting average, but it doesn't actually bear out on the ground. And I think one of the major improvements that could be made, Daniel's report he was talking about earlier, is to recognize what sorts of variances are being consistently sought, and further amend the bylaws to allow those sorts of things to proceed. Even with the predictability of whatever, 99% of these being approved, it's still a 6 to 12 months delay on the process. The construction efficiency of multiplexes, I think, is wonderful. Like, it's just a product that the industry understands really well. It's stick-built housing. It's all the Part 9 codes that everyone's familiar with. There's an incredible opportunity. And I guess this is what brings me here, even though it's at the bottom of the list. There's an incredible opportunity for architectural design. That's what really brought me into the multiplex world. Next slide. So this is, I guess, a typical floor plate. Next slide. Here's another one where we're looking at 4 units side by side. This is the second floor of a building in plan, looking at how different bedrooms lean up against each other, how to nest staircases and bathrooms in between each other. Next slide. These sorts of buildings really allow like an enormous amount of experimentation and play and thoughtfulness and non-repetitiveness, variation, new materials, great quality building science. There's just tremendous opportunity for people to join in and like make good quality fabric buildings. Next slide. Because the efficiency ratios are so high, there's also a lot of opportunities to oversize staircases and circulation spaces and just create, you know, opportunities to bring natural light into the middle of spaces. Again, a lot of, you know, individualized and personality-driven interior design. It's like a great product to be delivering to market. Next slide. And so in conclusion, I guess there's one more point I wanted to bring up, only because I heard it on the radio yesterday, that there's, although there's enormous political pressure to, from on high to create more housing, I think there's like a nascent backlash on the idea that increased housing supply in some way cannibalizes homeowners' wealth. I hadn't heard that until like last week, and now I've heard it twice. And so I think I think that's like a little gross, but outside of that, I think missing middle is a solution to that problem. I think single family housing is like scarce and expensive in urban centers and can continue to be. And missing middle housing, by virtue of providing more square footage and more front doors on single family lots, can be a different asset class that's more affordable without cannibalizing existing single family resources. But as a developer, I'd rather be building more of these. I would way rather find purchasers who want to purchase a half, a third, a quarter of one of these projects and own it as their own for a long period of time. And as a city, I think we should be encouraging these, both for the kind of like varied cosmopolitan attributes that they bring to the city as a whole, and for the really broadly expanded tax base that they bring with them. It is a much lower dollar price per front door, but a much higher gross dollar price per site. And I think that's really the magic of the multiplex bylaws, and we're going to keep on devoting our energies to exploring all the corners of it. Thank you.